I'm DJ, and welcome to One Shots Tavern, a TTRPG podcast where we seek out new ways to tell your stories through different systems and games. And today, I am joined by George. George is the creator of a TTRPG called Mappa Mundi and is a part of the studio, correct me, Three Sales Studios?
Resale Studios, that's us, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, George. We've been trying to get this scheduled for a while, so I'm glad that we finally were able to get it all together. Background. We are a TTRPG podcast where we specifically, seek out new ways to tell people's stories by learning as many TTRPGs as possible, exploring the world outside of everything that we knew, which was mostly 5th edition and 3.5 and Pathfinder, and, moving out into the world. What was your journey like your inspirations, your first TTRPG experiences?
First of all, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here. I think in a way I'm a little bit of a not a full unicorn because I know there are more of us out there, but my first TTRPG experience actually wasn't D&D. It wasn't 5th edition. It wasn't anything that came before. My first TTRPG experience was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition.
Yeah.
And I forget how long ago that was, but I'm going to say it's at least 20 years ago. And I fell in love with it. I was I wanted to be a big wargamer at the time. Couldn't really afford war games. Couldn't afford wargaming miniatures by any stretch of the imagination. And so Warhammer, and I was always like big into fantasy rather than big into the kind of sci-fi stuff. Like I like my sci-fi. We all like our sci-fi, right? But fantasy's always been like, or was certainly at that point was really where it was at for me. And so Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay was excellent because I got to do, even if I didn't get to do like the miniature wargaming, I got to be like in that world and actually I far more satisfyingly got to like interact with that world outside of just here's my army, there's your army, let's kill each other. Like I think my first character was inevitably a witch hunter because I love that aesthetic. And yeah, that was how I got started. Like I didn't come on to D&D. I don't think I played D&D for the first time until I was in my 20s. Like I play, and really when I think about it, like that's like the smallest part of my TTRPG experience is D&D based. Like I played a lot of the One Ring. I carried on playing Warhammer Fantasy. In fact, I played a lot of the One Ring when I think about it, like a huge amount of it. But yeah, and then since then I've kind of moved around. I still try and play as much as I can. I tend to be like a reader of TTRPGs now rather than like I'm far more of a reader of TTRPGs as books and games rather than a player of TTRPG books and games. Which is not to say that I don't play, but like I get a lot of satisfaction and joy, especially from like a designer's perspective from reading other people's games. So like recently Fabula Ultima has been like way up there on my list. Like I've had the book for ages and I'm just waiting for an opportunity to get a group together to play it. What else? I'm having a look behind me on my shelf now. So I've got Salvage Union. I had that arrive recently. Like I'm not. I like mechs a lot. Like I really used to like Neon Genesis Evangelion back in the day, and I've never played a mech game before, and Salvage Union feels like a real good one for that. So yeah, I'm kind of like a bit all over the place really, but D&D has been, like I said, far lower down my list of experiences. Like I've played a good amount of it, and I know what I do like in it, which isn't loads, and I know what I don't like in it, which is loads. And that's no shade on anyone else because I know it's the gateway. Like it's the gateway for almost everyone, right? It is for as far as most people are concerned. Like I would go as far as saying probably like 90% of people that play TTRPGs, D&D is the only one they play, if not the only one they know. And but yeah, so for me, I've always tried to be like, a lot of my influences come from outside of D&D, and I think that really comes through. Like as we get onto Mappa Mundi, I think it really shows in Mappa Mundi, and it's showing in the other games that I'm working on as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I've never played Warhammer, right? I've never
Mhm.
really played much in the way of war gaming.
Yeah.
And it's funny because right now my TikTok FYP is nothing but Warhammer because of the new Space Marines 2
Yeah.
coming out and stuff. And I like my relationship to it is so like I I know so much of the lore because I
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
exposed to so much of the lore. I don't think I understand it. I do. It's a huge satirization almost of TTRPGs and like that fantasy world in itself, right? It is like everything is cranked up to 11 and over the top.
I mean,
It's
in that way, you
interesting.
probably
Yeah.
understand it more than most people who actually play it. The fact that you understand that it's a satire is
Right.
like that. You're already four steps ahead of
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of war gamers.
Well, it's funny because like I was literally laying in bed this morning flipping through, and I was like, "What?" So it's funny because like Warhammer and Warhammer 40K, they both cover topics that D&D could never get away with, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, "Why? Why is that?" And then I realize it's because it is a full on satirization of those touchy topics. Whereas like you take Dungeons and Dragons, and it's just way too serious about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I get you. Like I think there's also the sense that like because Warhammer and 40K and stuff because they're like British as well. They're
yeah.
like and they're rooted in British design. And again, this is no shade on Americans whatsoever, but like there is a sense like that I suppose like irony is really woven into British humor. Like it's really
Right.
deeply wound into British humor, and satire is like possibly the thing that we like most over here.
Yeah.
And like when you think about like comics, like graphic novels like V for Vendetta as well, they are a satire of like that's a satire of Thatcherite Britain, but with like a real cutting undertone of like of political awareness and
Yeah, yeah.
understanding. Unfortunately, I think a lot of like Warhammer and 40K have lost like the biting political edge, and actually now people are just venerating space Nazis
Yeah,
as
yeah, right.
heroes. Like
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
get it.
exactly. Yep, and that's kind of the way that I look at it. In fact, I think a lot of the times when British entertainment makes its way to the United States, there's always going to be a subset of Americans who just take it way too seriously.
Mm.
And like can't understand the satirical whimsy and like tongue in cheek, like this is ridiculous and bad, therefore like you should laugh at it and not take it seriously. And then you've got like, I'm not gonna pick on Warhammer players because my co-host is a Warhammer player, but yeah. Well, so Mappa Mundi.
Yes.
You tell me about the inspirations behind this, and for those of you who have not did not watch the Twitch stream, it is going to be available after this. It is we had a lot of fun. Uh, so
I'm
much
so
fun.
glad you did. I knew you were going to be safe in Jeremy's hands.
Yes.
So Mappa Mundi is an exploration and ecology RPG. That's the subtitle that we've given it, an EERPG. And so it's the like as a brief introduction, the premise of Mappa Mundi is that it's in a parallel version of our own world, kind of pan global medieval period. And the central gameplay loop, the aim of the game is that it's a non-violent TTRPG. There's actually no
Right.
rules for combat. You cannot fight in this game. And your job, and it is a job, like you play as chroniclers, and your job is to go out into a world that is just emerging from 100 years of an environmental catastrophe called the Flux. And the Flux made traveling between the continents of the world, which look like our continents because they are our continents for all intents and purposes, and the regions within those continents, it made travel essentially impossible. And as a consequence of this, people have like lost their history, which was primarily oral before this. They have lost their sense of who they are in the world and who everyone else is in the world. And I suppose most importantly for Mappa Mundi, the fact that there are monsters in this world. And we use the term monsters because it's a kind of easy touchstone, but actually a lot of these monsters are not monstrous. They're not
Right.
necessarily dangerous. Some of them are very dangerous, but they're not, you know, they're not all dangerous. They're not all out to kill and eat people. They are like what we call them conduits of fate. So fate has designed the world that Mappa Mundi is set in, and is she's unknowingly unmaking it as well. And so the job of the chroniclers for the Mappa Institute is to be the first people, now that the flux has begun to subside, to go out into the world and reconnect it. And they do that by learning and observing monsters, creatures, cultures, and people. They encounter people, learn about them, document their stories, encounter monsters, journey through the wilderness, mapping as they go, and essentially writing the new history of the world. And again, like I said, it's a non-combat system. There is no combat. So your job is, you are essentially adventure academics. And yeah, so that's the kind of core premise of the game. The inspirations for it, weirdly, so I'm sat in my office at home at the moment. It's a spare bedroom, but it's the room that I use as my office. And next door to this is the bedroom that me and my partner share. And so, you know, when someone in a room with you is awake and you are asleep, and you are vaguely aware that they're awake, and you're in this kind of like semi-conscious, awake sleep dream state. So like for about 20 minutes, that was the case. And then suddenly I sat bolt upright, and I turned to my partner and I was like, oh my God, what if I designed a TTRPG that was Pokemon, but instead of but the point of Pokemon, in my mind, actually the Pokemon games is to complete the Pokedex. Like that's why you're sent out into the world. You just happen to become Pokemon Master on the way. And when you finish in inverted commas the game, when you become Pokemon Master, you are judged on how much of the Pokedex you've filled up. And I loved that idea.
Right.
I always loved it as a kid, continue to love it now. And I was like, what if the point of this TTRPG was to go out and like find all of the monsters in the world? And she was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. But what is it? Is it not just Pokemon? I was like, yeah, but medieval maps and bestiaries. And she was like, that's it. You've got it. So I jumped out of bed.
Right.
I don't sleep in any clothes. That might be a bit too much information, but I don't sleep in any clothes. I came running through into this room, has this big picture window right by my desk, and just furiously started typing away, and like immediately concepted it out. And she's like, are you going to get dressed? And I was like, shut up, don't interrupt the flow, I'll forget it. And then we're done. So Mappa Mundi then obviously has gone through more development by that point, but like that was the core inspiration. I wanted a game where you could, in inverted commas, collect monsters, but this motif of do no harm, which runs throughout Mappa Mundi, means you're not collecting these monsters, you're not taking them and putting them in a zoo. Instead, you are collecting knowledge and learning and information and building out, you know, your chronicle, which is what our chroniclers are filling in, is, for want of a better word, essentially a kind of like medieval Pokedex. So like that core idea kicked Mappa Mundi off, and obviously it's developed since then, but that was where the core inspiration came from.
Yeah, I mean, you can really feel the inspiration of Pokemon in it. I really liked the aspect of going through and you know, trying to figure out these aspects of the creature that you are not hunting but observing,
encountering, right? You're track. I mean, hunting, it's a loaded term, hunting, because it implies that there's a death at the end, right? But actually, you can hunt for your keys. You can hunt for a job, right? You can the term. Unfortunately, the term is now associated with death. But like you are hunting down and tracking down these monsters and creatures as well. Like the monsters are like the big targets. They're normally like, you know, much bigger than human size. But we've also got the final book, the core book, which we're getting ready to crowdfund in February of 2025. The core book will have 30 monsters and 50 creatures. So that's 10 monsters per region and 5 creatures per region, because we want it to feel like a living world. Big part of that, I should add, is that like the subtitle of the game is an exploration and ecology RPG, right? The point is this is a living world it's its own ecology of
Right.
which you are a part, and you need to explore it. And so, like, the structure of the game, like the kind of the core structure of the game is a research phase, a journey phase, and an encounter phase. So research is discover your, like, learn about your target and the wilds and the wilderness that it lives in. The journey phase is travel through that wilderness, but actually travel through it and actually have experiences there, rather than like D&D, which is you leave place A, 5 days later you turn up at place B. Oh no, you got, you rolled a 4, so you got attacked by goblins on the way, lose 5 hit
Right.
points, right? Like, exploration actually had to be a real thing here. And then the encounter phase, where you are using your skills, abilities, interactions, and the knowledge you've gained in the research phase to uncover these monsters' unique behaviors. And this is, in a way, this is like the exploration side of things, because there's no combat in the game. One of the things that we get asked quite a lot is, well, where does the jeopardy come from? Like, where's the danger? And I was like, well, look, just because you are not a source of danger and jeopardy doesn't mean that the world is not a dangerous place full of
Right.
jeopardy, right? And so I'm an absolutely huge Hideo Kojima fan. Like, I've been playing the Metal Gear Solid games since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And Death Stranding, I know this is not necessarily the most, but people either love or hate that game, and I am one of the former. I absolutely love it. And I think it's the first inspiration we mentioned. I'm just opening the book up right now. The first inspiration on my side of things, is Death Stranding. Because in that game, while there is some danger from like the BTs and like the mules and stuff, actually the antagonist of the game is the landscape that you are moving through, except it's not antagonistic. It
Right.
doesn't care about you. You are insignificant. Like, one person, you're insignificant in relation to a mountain, but you have to overcome that struggle. So I've tried to weave all the way through the game that it's difficult and it's tough. And not only is it difficult and tough and dangerous, but you don't have any weapons. Like,
Right.
you are going out into a dangerous world and saying, I will do no more harm, that is now just beginning to try to recover from a near extinction event. So
Right.
yeah, like the inspirations are like, when people see Death Stranding in there, they're like, what are you talking about? How is this anything like Death Stranding? But in that sense, that like the world is something that you have to struggle in with and against is kind of baked into Mappa Mundi's DNA.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. I especially with the scenario that Jeremy threw us into. You go into this village, you're investigating, you're picking up clues from each of the people you're talking to. And when you get the right clue, right, you get this what was it? It's like essentially an asset in a way for when you go to find the creature, and
Yeah,
like,
exactly. There's
yeah,
information is hidden throughout the research phase that when you eventually get to both the journey and encounter phases, it's going to make that process much easier.
right. So the rolling for this, it uses a variety of dice, depending on which skill you're rolling. And so the proficiency that you have with the skill is determined by the, numerical, how high that dice can go, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about these, the rolling mechanics, how you decided on these ones in particular.
Got you. So Mappa Mundi uses D4s, D6s, D8s, and D12s. And this is something that I realize now that I'm carrying over to, as with 3 Cell Studios. I'm the studio lead at 3 Cell Studios and our lead designer. So, like, at the moment, all of our game ideas are from me, and then Jeremy comes in as the developer and editor and my co-writer, and helps me polish and get things going, and is also just really good at running the games as well. And he's absolutely invaluable in all of those roles. So the D4, D6, D8, and D12, we call those. So you have 4 attributes. You have only 4 in the whole game: exploration, observation, traversal, and basically anything you need to do mechanically can be done through one of those things. And because Mappa Mundi is a kind of narrative first, theme first game, there isn't actually that much dice rolling compared to something like D&D or Pathfinder, for example. So the idea is that you start off with 2d4s and 2d6s. You assign each of those dice to one of those 4 attributes. And over time, as you succeed with those dice, and when you fail with those dice, you mark those down on your character sheet. But when you've got enough successes and failures, you can, rather than leveling your character, you essentially level your dice up.
Right.
So a D4 becomes a D6, D6 becomes D8, D8 becomes D12. The idea being that you learn from both success and failure. So if you want to move a D4 to a D6, you need to succeed with that attribute 6 times and fail with it 3 times. So it's always the value of the new dice in successes and half the value of the new dice in failures. You then upgrade that dice, because if you've just graduated from the Mappa Mundi Institute, maybe you're a bit of a physical type, maybe you're a character types is a guardian, and they're your more kind of physical out in the kind of people. They will have gone hiking and they'll have exploring, and maybe they'll have gotten themselves into a couple of kind of tricky spots, but they're not going to be able to like free scale an ice cliff, for example.
Right.
They're not experienced enough to do that. So you're not going to be able to do that on a D6, for example, but you probably could do it on a D12. So the idea is rather than, rather than experience, we call this expertise. Because you are doing a job, right? You are a diviner, a fixer, a guardian, or an artist. These are jobs that you're doing. You're not born to them. Like, you're not some half-elf sorcerer. You're not born to it. And ideally, we all hope that we get better at our jobs over time. We become more expert at the things that we do. And so Mappa Mundi's dice system is built around that idea that you should get better, or that you do get better at the things that you are able to do as you do them more often. And that you learn from failure almost as much as you learn from success as well. So it's always a role. You make rolls to see if you can or can't do something over rather than under. So like the idea being is that, you are like a D4 is not going to allow you to scale an ice cliff freehand, but a D12 might. You might need to get a 12 to do that. Mm-hmm. And you can only do that on a D12. You can't do it on a D4. We call it the expertise system. And that's how you also kind of, in inverted commas, level skills, which we have skill paths for, and you unlock those by using skills, again based around the 4 attributes. If you use a skill that's associated with traversal, you gain some skill points in that, and then you can use those to unlock new traversal skills along the pathway. The idea is you're getting better and more capable as you play through the game.
Right. That is always fun. One of the things that we talk about a lot here on the podcast is the idea of, success through failure, right? Mm-hmm. We often harp on the idea of, no, right? Just no. Yeah. But giving it instead no but, right? And so with this, you fail those 3 times, it changes your skills around a bit. I like that. I like giving this ever evolving character sheet, with your skills, and like a reward through failure, reward through success. You know what I mean? It makes 100%. Gameplay feel a lot more dynamic. And
it takes away a lot of feels bad moments as well, right?
Yes.
Like if you
absolutely.
Like the fact that like if in another game, if you fail, that's it. That your turn
turns over.
Your turn's over. Yeah, and because because we don't have combat, we don't have to have turns. Like we don't have to have stuff like that because it's narrative first. You're still going to be able to contribute. Yeah. Something will be learned. You will gain a point, an expertise point for failing, but that will also reveal something. Like pissing a monster off might inadvertently reveal one of its behaviors because you tried to do something but failed. That might reveal one of its behaviors, or change the dynamic of the encounter. So there's always forward momentum going on.
Right.
Never just like grinds to a halt.
Yeah, which is fantastic. With the scenario that we ran through, and like the foggy
Mhm.
snail beast that we
Yeah.
were, tracking down, coming across a poacher, and
Mhm.
having to deal with them in a way that is, not the way that you would deal with a poacher in another type of game, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
And
because you're not just
yeah,
you can't just kill him, right? You
right, you
can't
can't just
kill
kill
him.
him, you can't beat him up, right?
Yeah.
Like it's instead, I think we basically disarmed him and sent him on his way and said if we ever see you again, uh
Mhm.
it works out really well. So, with the four attributes that we have traversal, observation, deduction, exploration, and then those lend into the individual skills
Yeah.
that your character has. So, for example, I played a character who was a guardian,
Mhm.
and they had quick thinking, soft steps, tracks in the mud, basically, using the transversal or not transversal, traversal uh, abilities and the exploration abilities in order to kind of, track things down and be like this protector of these creatures. Um,
That's a very guardian attitude. I like it. Well
yeah.
done.
Oh, absolutely, and it was fun. But then you also have, weaknesses.
Yeah.
My strength was traversal, my weakness was deduction, right?
Mhm.
Um, I it wa I very much enjoyed this aspect, especially the aspect of taking this game, looking over the rules and going, "Oh, okay, cool. I can probably get people set up within about 30 minutes of handing out character sheets and handing out the options and
Yeah.
get them started on a little adventure, whether that's going to turn into a campaign or that's going to just be a short little one shot. Which brings me to my next thing. This Mappa Mundi feels to be um perfect for episodic adventures,
Yeah.
where you're not spending 6 weeks in the same village tracking down that same beast, right?
Mhm.
Instead, you can really, yeah, maybe it might take 2 sessions, but you can really hone it in and just, I don't know, go with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I
It's
know
just
you're
that,
right. You are
yeah.
right. And so when I was designing Mappa Mundi, I designed it with campaign play in mind. Like in my mind, my perfect Mappa Mundi is the same group of chroniclers explore the entire world, like every continent, all across the world, from end to end, top to bottom. That's my ideal campaign, and eventually you will be able to do that. Like the core book that we're crowdfunding in February is it covers our version of Eurasia and North Africa, and there's 10 regions
Yeah.
that are going to be available in that. But that leaves our version of sub-Saharan Africa. It leaves both of the Americas and Central America as well,
Right.
Australasia, and it leaves the entire ocean and the islands that are in those oceans. If Mappa Mundi, if people like Mappa Mundi were already planning, those releases as source books and additional, with their own regions, their own character, licenses and new specializations and endorsements and all that kind of stuff. But it also works as one shots. It works
Right.
as you can just go and do one monster, or as you said, rather than spending 6 weeks in a single village, you can spend 6 weeks in a single region,
Right.
because we give you 3 monsters, 5 creatures, and we're giving you what we call them tales of interest. So like story
Yeah.
hooks, because it's not just monsters and creatures, it's also landscapes, geographical features, cultural events that are happening, all of these different things. You could never leave on every single thing about it. And if you've got So we don't call ours GMs, we call them narrators. If you've got a
Yeah.
narrator who wants to like flex their creative muscles and wants to send you out looking for plants or insects or like this weird aurora that only occurs once every,
Yeah.
you could write the history of one region.
Yeah.
It's my design philosophy is really, really inspired by, there was a French like surrealist art movement called Wheeler and the belief in that is that actually it's restriction that breeds creativity. If you restrict yourself, you have to become more creative to get around that. So for example, there's a novel and each chapter only uses words that have a single vowel in. So there's an A chapter and E chapter and I
Right.
or a U chapter. The book's called Eunoia. And it's amazing. And so what I try to do when I'm designing is set myself boundaries that you cannot go outside of this one. And one of them was design a game with monsters in with no combat. One of the restrictions for Mappa Mundi was, for me as a designer, was like, right, design a game that is recognizable as a fantasy TTRPG, like a historical fantasy TTRPG, that you could look at it and think, oh, maybe that's D&D or maybe that's Pathfinder, but take the combat out, but still have monsters and danger in it. So that was one of the restrictions that I put in place. And Mappa Mundi allows the narrator to do this, to put like invisible borders around the game space. Because a lot of players, everyone says they don't want to be railroaded, and no one wants rail. Well, actually, when you just, if you just sit there and say to someone, right, well, you're in a city, what do you do? Everyone's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, no one knows that you need to have invisible boundaries that people, like, that help people enjoy the game. And so, in terms of like running Mappa Mundi as one shot, you can do that because you choose a region, a monster, and choose some journey cards. Off you go and have fun. But you can very easily turn those things into a longer running campaign that could take you across the entire face of the earth, which would be, like I said, that's my dream Mappa Mundi campaign right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's pretty limitless on what you can do with it, which is really awesome. I know some of the creatures are kind of like almost folklore-y,
Yeah.
kind of cryptozoology, type things. But back to what you said about the railroads, right?
Yeah.
One of the big things I've noticed as a game master for hire has been this absolute need for some sort of railroads. I've had players in some of my games who are very much like, I want to improv every little thing. Like, I don't want you to plan a thing. And then all of a sudden they're like, so what about this? And what about like what's and then well, I'm waiting on your cue. Give me the cue.
Yeah.
Right? And all of a sudden players start to realize that like they're much better at improving off of what the game master is doing, and that maybe it doesn't quite work as much for them as a player to have the game master improv every little thing.
Yeah, who'd have thought, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
But Mappa Mundi is trying to do something in that space as well, right? So I intended Mappa Mundi to be a collaborative storytelling experience in as close to the truest sense of that as I could possibly get. And the mechanic that allows us to do that is called shaping. Now, obviously, you experienced this with the session that Jeremy ran for you, and shaping is something that we're really, really proud of, but also something we didn't quite realize the value of what we had until we started publicly playtesting, because people were enjoying it. They're like, oh yeah, the monsters, that was great. Research, that was great. But then they're like, the shaping, like that was excellent. And we were like, okay, like maybe we need to make some more of this. So shaping, for people who haven't read the pre-release guide yet, and I will just say the pre-release guide is available to download for free. It's got all of the rules, all 4 character types, half of the skill parts, and the pre-written adventure that you guys played.
Oh yeah, we'll have the link to that in the episode description for people to get a hold of course. So
when we were putting the pre-release guide together, I said we need to make more of shape. So for those people who haven't had a chance through the book yet, shaping is in Mappa Mundi, the narrative control of the game is largely given over to players. Like we provide, when we're talking about railroads, Mappa Mundi has a structure. It has a 3-part structure. It has research phase, journey phase, encounter phase. Now, you can mess those around however you want. You can meld them together. There's lots of different creative things you can do with them. But that structure keeps the game moving. But within that, shaping it was best described by one of our playtesters who described it as adding flavor text to the world. So when you are journeying through a forest, like the forest card comes up in the journey phase, you're journeying through a forest, the narrator will give you a kind of brief overview of what a forest in X region might be like. But then we'll go round the table asking players to provide detail. And that could be a couple of words, it could be a sentence, it could even be a paragraph, it might even just be a feeling. And then it's passed around and everyone builds on it or gives their own perspective on these different things. And then the narrator takes it back and sprinkles a little bit more of their own flavor on it and then carries that forward. It's not like a wasted effort. The narrator is then the responsibility of the narrator to keep the world that the players are creating alive and flowing and bring those things back. And like another example of this is when you uncover a monster behavior, like let's say D&D, for example, if you walk into there's a dragon in there, the DM is going to tell you what that dragon looks like, what the room smells like. If the dragon says something, it's going to be the DM who's telling you what it's saying. In Mappa Mundi, when you uncover a behavior, the narrator tells you what behavior you've uncovered and then says, tell me about it. What does it look like, feel like, smell like, sound like? What is the monster saying to you? And as a consequence, that narrative control really put forward onto the players. And that's about trust. But actually, in our experience, almost universally, everyone buys into it really quickly. And actually, like, because it's their world. Like, we know this as forever DMs, right? And forever GMs. Oftentimes, people are playing in our playground. And that's lovely for us. It's very creative for us until they ruin it, which they always do. But,
of course.
Yeah, they always do. But so in this case, the players can't ruin anything because it's their world. You as the narrator are there to provide the structure and the framework, but they are the ones that paint the scene. They are the ones that bring it to life. They are the ones that put words into people's mouths or details onto the scene. And like, every time I run it or every time I watch it run, there's at least one moment where someone is shaping, where I legit get like shivers down my spine because of what someone has said. And it's always different. It's always different. Like I've run this game a lot of times now, and in like not once has the same detail been added to an otherwise identical scene. And I love that part, that kind of liberatory quality that Mappa Mundi gives to players, but also to narrators as well, because you don't have to spend weeks prepping for a single session only for them to go left instead of right. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is actually something I have kind of picked up recently in some of the games that I've been running, and games that typically don't have it because it's such a good mechanic to have. For one, there's a connection to what's being built. That the players wouldn't have if I had just read off a paper that was, this is the scene, the color of the walls are red, like that. That's it works, but also at the same time, giving players creative control over things really helps them to visualize it themselves. Which is so important. The first time I ran into it was I don't know if you've played any Gila RPG games from Spencer Campbell. You talked about how you like just reading through TTRPGs. You would love Spencer's writing style and just picking up stuff. But a lot of his games have become diceless.
So diceless was actually, Jeremy has a running every time this is the one where it's going diceless. I initially wanted Mappa to be diceless. The other games I'm working on, the original pitch was like, no dice, I'm not doing it this time. And every time I put them back in. But that's because I'm now happy with our like expertise dice system. I'm happy that it's minimized.
He uses like the Lumen 2.0 system, which is very much like, here's an adventure, and it's either a solo RPG
Hmm.
or like, a small little thing. One that he did is called Hunt.
Yeah.
Um and it's basically your knights in an order, and you have to go hunt a beast to restore the honor of the order.
Hmm.
And really there's not a whole lot of details apart from that. It's
I love
basically,
that. I love
yeah,
that.
it's
That's
so good.
what you need.
Yeah, it's like, why did your order fall? Awesome,
Yeah.
right? Like, what beast are you hunting? Like, and it's like, cool. This is great. And so to see it in Mappa Mundi, and like to experience it was satisfying,
No,
especially in a
I'm really glad you think
it,
so.
it was super satisfying, especially I love the dice system. I'm really starting to like these dice pool systems where stats are associated with like a roll.
Hmm.
We had mentioned Fabula Ultima. It's different where you're rolling multiple stats and stuff,
Yeah.
but with this, it's so cozy, right? It is a cozy, like, you know, it's cold outside. Let's sit around the table with the fire going, and let's go explore the world and find a creature and, possibly save it by, chronicling that it even exists.
So I will.
And yeah.
What you are entirely right. Mappa Mundi is cozy if you've only played the adventure that you've played, because like it's
That's
it's
fair.
the big giant snail, the medieval French village. That feels cozy, right? Like that, and there's a bit of
Yeah.
jeopardy in there, but like it's basically benevolent. But I like cozy. I've got a lot of time for cozy. I think it's nice to feel safe and secure. But Mappa Mundi's world outside of that first adventure is a dangerous place,
Oh.
and there are don't get me wrong, there are
Yeah.
plenty of like amazing monsters who you are going to want to make friends with. Um, but the difference is, I suppose what the pivot point on this is in the same region in Barbecia, which is our version of medieval France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. You have the Helix Carcol, the giant 50-foot tall, beautiful snail who doesn't really care that you're there. But
Right.
100 miles away, you have the Tarasconus, who is like a 40-foot long dragon lion tortoise who wants nothing more than to tear you apart.
Right.
But you have to treat it in the same way. You still can't
Right.
you're not there to hurt it. So one of the things that we're trying to do, and this is coming to the fore now as we're moving into so we're moving toward crowdfunding in February, like I said, and the idea is that the book will be 100% done ideally by the day the Kickstarter starts, but certainly by the day that it finishes, because we're looking for a quick turnaround. We don't want
Right.
people waiting
Yep.
a year and a half for the book to come out. We want it in people's hands as quickly as we can possibly get it. So the full game and the journey deck will be done by the time the Kickstarter finishes. But so as one of the things that we're doing right now is, while Joel, our artist, who's also so Joel, Jeremy, and I are 3 Cell Studios. We all own a stake in the business. Joel is our in-house artist. So while Joel is doing all of the rest of the artwork, the thing that
Mhm.
Jeremy and I are working on at the moment, regional guide. So for all 10 of the regions, there's like a
Yeah.
history, a culture, a geography, and a bestiary, and these tales of interest for. And one of the things we're trying to do is varying shades of light and dark and varying types of experiences. So for example, like I finished the regional guide for Leknitsa the other day, which is our kind of version of Eastern Europe, basically from Finland down to the Black Sea and a kind of
Yeah.
across into for basically Poland across to Ukraine. And there were 2 really excellent monsters there that we were really happy with, and struggling to agree on a third. And then suddenly, and I'm going to give you, DJ, I'm going to give you a reveal that's exclusive to this podcast right now. So you're going to get an exclusive reveal. The third monster that we settled on are from Latvian folklore, and they're called the Sumperni. And they're not werewolves because they're not shapeshifters. and they're not humans, but they are giant dogs that walk on two legs that have this, like, they mimic and mock human society. So the king of the Sumperni is the Sumperni with the longest tail. And they're like, so we didn't really have like a kind of like dark horror monster. And
Yeah.
I found that one, I was like, this is it. This is the third.
Yeah.
And like this. So like, but then on the other side of things, in Garugoma, there's a monster called the Mande Barung, and I'm writing adventure for that at the moment. That's like a real tearjerker. It's like this beautiful thing that's going on, and it's like hyper emotional, but in a really lovely way, but also a heartbreaking way. So cozy applies to certain bits of it, but then also
Right.
horrific and profound and dark and savior and all these different kind of labels can be applied to the game, because I don't want you to have the same experience 30 times. I want you to
Right.
feel something and experience something different every single monster you come across.
All right. Do you guys have a Kickstarter page up where you're basically getting people for the notify me yet?
We do, yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
we launched that the other best that if people really, they can go to mappamundierpg.com and sign up to join our mailing list there. That gets, that will put you, we send you links out for our Discord and Facebook communities. We'll provide you with links for those as well, DJ, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, mappamundierpg.com, sign up to the mailing list. I send out monthly email updates and you get the community links. Obviously, the pre-release guide is available to download as well. And the Kickstarter page, you can go and click notify me there as well. If you do all three of those things, I'd be extra happy. That would be great. But if you can only do one, then if you can only do one, best way. But I'd be happy if you did any of.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're like 6 months out now from the launch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will have all of those things in the description of the episode here. It's funny because Andrew and I don't know if you know this, but Andrew and I both also did our own, like, small things last February. Not that yours is small, yours is much larger. We did Zine Quest, and we did not gather any emails or anything like that. Our launch page was up for a week, right?
Yeah.
For the notify me, and it's like we looked at all of these things and like, okay, what can we do better next time, and it really is like having a good lead in time for when you have the Kickstarter launch, and making sure that you are gathering like all of these people's emails and having them to blast. So it's good to hear that you are doing that.
Yeah, so
Because
it's my responsibility as the studio lead, business side of things.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
like, so we've been advertising this last month. We've been doing a community advertising, which has been going great. Like we've had just shy of 1,000 signups, like
Oh,
email
nice.
list signups in the
Yeah.
last month, which is incredible. And then, we're going to carry on with that. We're going to do another podcast before we launch, but like community building, like I love doing conventions. So we did UK Games Expo earlier on this year. We did Aircon Northwest a few weeks ago. We've got Dragon Meet coming up later on this year. Ideally next year or the year after, we're aiming to get out to the States. We have someone, a friend of ours, Kat Lim, is running Mappa Mundi, a big bad con, which I think is San
Nice.
Francisco.
Yep.
So like, the idea is that we are trying to make 3 Cell Studios into a sustainable, ethical business that produces excellent, innovative games that mean something. And Mappa Mundi that's us planting our flag. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone, make sure you check out the links down below. We will have basically anywhere that you can follow George and 3 Sales Studios and the whole process with Mappa Mundi. And of course, coming up after this, we are going to have the actual play of us playing that scenario with Jeremy. And it's so much fun. We have a few friends of the show on it. Classic Sam and Justin from So You Want to Be a DM. So I highly recommend you listen to that next and get a good feel for it. And of course, sign up to be notified on Kickstarter, because it does no harm. If anything, it gives you a chance when you see it launch to actually like look at this beautiful and amazing art. And then of course you can back it there as well. George, thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast playing Mappa Mundi. I can't wait to back Mappa Mundi when
You're
it's
too
ready.
kind, DJ. Like I know
Um,
no one could big old smile. Thank you so much for having
of course. Yeah,
appreciate it.
no, it really was a lot of fun, and it's I love these small independent studios and all of their projects. So I can't wait. But if you all like what we're doing here, please check out oneshotstavern.com where you can follow us on all of our socials, check out our Patreon, and of course, just sign up for our email list in case, something important comes up. We haven't used our email list yet. I don't like putting spam in people's inboxes. But if something does come up, that's going to be the best place to find us. But until next time, I'm DJ. This is One Shots Tavern.